one last thing. I got to reshare the stream. Share to a page, and we'll be ready to go. So that's done. Let that close. Okay.
Okay, I've got. I'm up in Clubhouse.
Oh, you are? Okay. Didn't know we were doing that today.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the New Media Show. My name is Todd Cochran. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Rob Greenlee. Rob, how you doing?
Doing terrific, Todd. It's great to be back doing the show. Trying to make it all work. I hope my audio sounds a lot better. I know I got some feedback about it not being so great last time, but
it sounds a little better, and I guess we'll just see how it goes. And I'm just joining the room now, and we're on a tight timeline today because I have a presentation.
I think you got to mute your mobile phone.
It is. There's no way to. Oh, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, that's better. I've got a presentation at 4:00 today, so we're going to run this to about 3:50 in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. But anyway, if you're joining us on Clubhouse, we are recording this today for our regular audience that's watching. This show is available via a live video as well at newmediashow.com/live. You can watch us live. We're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, or a whole bunch of different places today. And hopefully, Rob, your audio issues on Clubhouse have resolved from the last show.
I hope so, too.
So, I guess the one thing I wanted to talk about was the announcement that came out this morning from Marco Arment and Overcast of essentially any Chartable or Podsites redirect will no longer be counted on that app because of people having challenges getting the show because, according to him, they're being blocked.
Right.
Now,
it's always the concern from the early days that you start doing that kind of stuff and it's easy to identify and block access to the content. And these attribution engines are, putting an extra layer in there that's not really necessary.
Well, here's the thing that really gets me on this is who is okay. So we've gotten these tickets before, podcasters that are using those services saying, my listeners are saying they can't listen to my show, but it's usually web-based applications that are blocking the ability for someone to listen to the show because of those two particular redirects. Now, knock on wood, Blueberry and Podtrack so far haven't been affected because we don't do attribution tracking. We don't do privacy invasion. And really, that's not completely fair for the Chartable and Podsites users, but that's what's being assumed by these blockers is that they're doing attribution tracking and they're spying on listeners. So there's been blocks put in place. So I really want to understand is how this is actually happening on Marco's app. So if someone has the app on their phone,
so he's iOS.
I know he's iOS, but let's walk through this. So how his app is making a direct call to that media through the redirects. How is that getting blocked? Is the person running software on their phone that's looking? It has to be an application that's running on certain people's phones that are trying to block ad. But I've never run ad blocking software on my phone, so I don't even know which app would be causing the block list. Mm-hmm. How that's even happening? But he says it is. So
I guess we need to ask Marco what he's seeing out there that's causing this issue. So it must be some sort of an app that's available through the App Store. that you can install on your iOS device that is um, looking at URLs that are passing into your phone based on a blacklist, right?
Right.
So, I mean, if you look at it from that perspective, it's a pretty simplistic scenario.
But it does have me just a little bit puzzled, because again, we've seen issues come in via web, and there's a few browsers, not a lot, that are blocking those services.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's got one of these URLs that's being blocked, I'd love to have, I haven't seen one in probably a month from a ticket that's come into us, but if someone has one of these links that are supposedly being blocked, I surely would like to try it because I run an ad blocker. I use uBlock on my Chrome browser. So to this point, I don't know. Maybe I just need to try a Chartable or Pod Sites redirect link on a regular media URL and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that it would be good to do some experimentation around this and find out what's going on, because, I mean, certainly, for those ad blocking applications to just assume that there's advertisements writing along with the Chartable redirects it's kind of a big assumption, right?
Well, they're not being blocked, I don't believe, because of ads. I think those two services are being labeled by those groups as doing attribution tracking and privacy concerns.
Ad blocker stuff, or is it basically a privacy application that's doing this?
That's the question. I guess we need to find out.
That's the core of the real issue, is what kind of application, or is it an app that has both in it? I don't know.
Because Chartable can be used without you running ads, and same with Pod Sites, and same with us and with PodTrack. You don't have to have a quote unquote ad running. It's more about measurement, but apparently
that's so blocking access to the whole piece of content, not just the ads.
Right. They're not even letting people access the content unless they bypass, and this is what Marco has done, is he is basically skipping to the main URL and letting the media play so that they don't route the redirect through the request on the app. So to me, it still is a little sketchy from the standpoint that okay, so if I, at the app level, say anytime I see a Chartable or Pod Sites redirect, I'm going to jump to the media URL. He would have only have done this if what he says is true, is that the media is being blocked from being downloaded. Mm-hmm. So if that's happening on the Overcast app, it must be happening on other apps. It can't just be happening on his app.
Right.
If they're running that secondary software.
Right.
Or does he have or is he actually running the ad blocking technology in Overcast that's actually flagging these media URLs?
Yeah. I think that's a big question mark.
So I don't want everyone to get too crazy here on this, because there's answers there's questions to be asked, and we need some more answers from Marco. But if I look at what I made a comment on my Facebook page, and Tom Webster basically said, "Hey, it's just let me read what Tom said to my post, because let me find it here real quick." I basically said to let me find it. Tom said, "Let's put the subject back into that sentence. It means Mark Romette can block your podcast from Overcast." Well,
and I guess the other big part of this too is that does this say something about Marco's application? Is there some way that he can block access to the URLs in his app?
Well, Marcos went around, people are going to be able to get access to those programs. Just the only thing that's not going to happen is pod sites and Chartable are not going to get a attribution or measurement signal back from Marco's app. They're not going. They're not going to see that in their log files, because what he's going to do is when the request to play comes in, he's going to play the master URL and throwing out the Chartable and pod sites. Some people are, we see it on our stuff. People are running Blueberry Stats, PodTrack, Chartable, and they're running 4 prepends in front of their media. We see this all the time. This is nothing new.
Yeah, I know, but it's getting to be a little overkill when you start layering in those many redirects on a media URL. I mean, I would imagine there's got to be some latency issues with that.
Well, it happens. It's transparent because for us, it's just a flash.
Right. It doesn't.
It
typically probably doesn't take very long to do that.
No.
But Todd, I wanted to mention too that Paul Spain is up on stage with us too, and I don't know, Paul, if you wanted to jump in on this topic about ad blockers or privacy blockers blocking access to audio content in the Overcast app. Paul, do you have any thoughts on that? Have you heard anything?
I only heard about it first when you both raised it, but to me, sort of knowing a little bit about Marco and his approach, I can imagine this would be the sort of thing that he would choose to do. And so very easy for him to code that in, have a look at the URL, and just drop out those redirects. Very easy to do that in app. In terms of people choosing to fire their stats off in different directions, that's obviously worked for a very long time. And I mean, I choose not to generally do that, but I can absolutely understand why people might be happy to do that. And look, I think applications for a long time have not had a problem with those redirects, and particularly where podcasts are downloading while people sleep, which has been the traditional approach, while you plug your phone in overnight, etc. Not really a big deal. So to me, we shouldn't be too concerned about that, but maybe that's changing if these redirects are quite slow and somebody hits play and I don't know, if it adds too many milliseconds to the process, then eventually there will be a frustration there. But, I wouldn't be too concerned if people want to redirect through 4 services. You only have that risk, though, if one of those services down,
right.
Then, of course, the whole thing falls over and nobody can hear your episodes.
Well, and the concern now is that there's some third-party software that's blocking access to your content based on using these redirects. So that's where my concern is that, where does this spin, right?
Right.
Where does this go as you look to the future? I mean, are these apps going to be smart enough to detect whether or not a podcast has an ad in it, and somehow, I don't know how they would block an ad, Todd, really, if you think about it. It's not like they're going to mute your speaker or something.
No, but what they're doing is, okay, so it's just like a browser now. When you try to load a HTTP website, it warns you, that this site is not secure. So some of these are default behaviors of some of these. They're saying, hey, where you're going is unsafe. You're being tracked, and usually you can say allow it or stop, and you don't get access to it. But as Paul mentioned, the more redirects you have, the more chances of really failure happens. Now, knock on wood here. We put in, and we've talked about this on the show before. When we're running 80,000 shows and millions of episodes, and they have redirects on every one of their piece of media that comes from Blueberry, that server can never go down. Never. It just can't, because that's millions of episodes that immediately cannot be served, because it hits that first jump point, and if the server's not not there to pass it on, it stops and the media fails. Now, what we did is we built triple redundancy, and I have felt a second level before. We've had a server go down, and our criteria is 10 seconds. That secondary server picks up within 10 seconds of it being down. So just the monitoring resources on the redirect server is high enough so that we know. And then everybody's phones explodes because they send text messages and rings us, and that server's down. So the secondary server's online and it picks up the load and runs. It's just it's an exact copy and sitting in a different zone,
right,
in our cloud formation. And then the third computer or the third server has never been hit. It's set idle for 10 plus years. But we test that once in a while. We pull the plug, we turn the server off and make sure they jump down to make sure, it's going to have to be a nuclear war. Well, famous last words, because stuff can happen no matter what, and stuff can fail. But those redirect, and I'm sure Chartable and Podsites and everyone else has thought this through too as well, because your reputation will get damaged incredibly quickly if you're not delivering media for an hour. For 15 minutes, the phone, our support lines would start blowing up.
So when you did those relationships with, to allow those redirects to pass through your system, did you check to see from them if they had that redundancy?
The only person I have an agreement with is PodTrack, because, and we've tried. And I won't get into the politics of it, but we people that want to use Chartable with our services can. They just have to manually enter it. We don't make it so it's automated.
Right.
Same thing with Podsites, and it's largely because, well, we never got an agreement across the finish line.
Right.
So, and I think people that use Chartable and use Podsites, they're using it. They know what they're getting into. They know that. If they're running, I think to do the attribution on Chartable is an extra piece. I think you get your Chartable stats without attribution, and the only time you're running attribution is when you're doing a campaign and they're measuring it.
Right.
So probably 90% of the shows that are on Chartable probably are not having any attribution collection being done. So they're getting punished for a segment of their user base.
Yeah, and is this really more about privacy than anything else? And I think that's what we need to dig into, is that I just get this feeling that privacy issues are increasing, coming to a head. More and more. I keep hearing, and Todd, maybe you're hearing this too, but a lot of the bigger companies are really pushing back on tracking and doing retargeting and things like that, and they're starting to see what's happening from an EU perspective, even in the U.S. here, with new legislation passing in states and more things coming. That the sensitivity of tracking listeners is kind of getting higher and higher. So there's 13 states that have legislation in process that's very similar to the California CCPA. Right.
And so, at what point does the party end? We've said for a long time. Well, actually, one of those business owners made the statement that if X happened, it would put them out of business, and it's largely these privacy concerns. Right. Both Libsyn and Blueberry have done global GDPR on our data. Right. So.
And we are going to put out a listener privacy policy as well on our platform too. So everything is really clear because we see it definitely ramping up.
Yeah.
The concerns that, platform, brands, people that are involved in the podcasting advertising business being sensitive to this more and more.
So I don't know if any other companies have announced global GDPR. I know both of us have been very public about that, and for a long time. So I probably spent $500,000 implementing global GDPR at Blueberry.
Right.
And dev time. It was dev time, legalese, lawyers, and then having to put in some agreements with a couple of companies that, are couple of our service providers, people that we provide service for, and data exchange, and because there's all that legalese that goes along with GDPR, so it's not a cheap undertaking to implement that. But we're going to have more of this. There's going to be more. So it's just more simple for us to say, no, we're not going to do it.
So I wanted to open it up to anybody else in the clubhouse room if they want to come up and ask a question about this topic or provide any inside information that you might have about your understanding of this. If anybody, Chris or Dustin or anybody, just raise your hand and we'll definitely pull you up here. And Paul, is there any other thoughts that you have on this around the privacy side of things? I guess.
Okay. One thing that I'll wait for if Paul unmutes himself, but in the chat, in the Facebook chat, Brian says, "Well, I'm going to remove chartable prepend." Now, just so we're clear, don't anyone panic here.
Right. No,
all right, and we're not trying to put anybody out of business because of one action, but you need to. If you're not, here's the thing. I don't think this is widespread, this blocking. I think a certain specific set of circumstances has to happen on a listener's part for this to happen.
Right, and just keep in mind too, Marco is extremely sensitive to this stuff. So he's not he's
a privacy advocate.
Yeah, right. He is going to push the envelope on this stuff and raise awareness to it because he's concerned about it as well. And in some ways, Todd, this is what we were all concerned about the RAD initiative.
Right.
In PR too, being able to report back ad locations and playback. There was concerns about ad blocking in that situation as well. But Todd, I know that we're kind of have a limited time today, so I don't know if we feel like we covered that.
I think so.
If we want to move on to something else, I know that one of the things that came up today too is around Spotify. I guess you listen to 1 second of audio, which basically is hitting the play button on Spotify, and it's downloading 90 seconds of audio content.
Rob, that happens across.
No, I know it does, but I think what the point is that they're counting. Spotify is counting it as a play. Would be my comment on this, and why it was raised was, a person comes in and clicks the play button. That gets counted in the Spotify system. It doesn't get counted in our system.
There's probably very few instances where it wouldn't, because not at the first second, but our system is going to see that 60 seconds of download is going to happen very quickly. So it's not going to take much.
No, it isn't. You're right. But 1 second's a little quick.
Right. Now, if I start 1 second and stop at 5, let's be frank. The way every app is different. Some of them start downloading the whole thing immediately when you hit play. Some take a chunk. It's different actions for different devices. So, that 60-second thing is 60 second beyond ID. Now, remember, it's supposed to be before your ID3 load. So you have whatever your graphics, your ID3 text, 6, 7, 800, and then 1 meg is about a minute. You got to get beyond that before we count it as a 1. But I look at partial play data a lot.
Yeah.
And there is always, let's say a show has 10,000 downloads, and I think we're the only ones that actually look at this data for partial play. We see maybe there's 10,000 total downloads, maybe 300 or 400 of them only make it to the 25% mark. We don't show that data in partial play if it doesn't qualify, but 300 to 400 of those plays only made it to 25%. So how much of that we really can't tell, because as soon as that person hits play, the app starts pulling the media.
Right.
And if they're on a good connection, they could hit stop and get to 25% and still be counted as a 1.
And only listen to 1 or 2 seconds.
Maybe a little more, but not much. Again, it depends on their internet connection, on how much of that media gets pulled.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Burletta from Profitable Podcasting is part of the Pod News, is the one that kind of broke this, I guess. But it does raise issues, Todd, that are going to point to this conflation between counting and tracking of listener plays versus downloads, right? So I think the assumption is that when a person clicks play in Spotify or any of these platforms, as you look at IAB stats, that at least 1 minute of audio is played, right?
Right. So, but is anyone using this? You and I, and almost everyone else is on pass-through with Spotify. So we're giving them IAB certified data in our stats. Sean says, wouldn't downloading 90 seconds of audio qualify as an IAB download and pass through for Spotify? Yes, it would. If we see 90 seconds, absolutely, that's a 1.
Right, but from a listener perspective, they could start and stop within a couple of seconds.
Right, they could. Well,
right.
Again, we usually see there are some apps that'll even grab a little bit.
Right.
And
how fast the download connection is, right?
And they'll grab a little bit of the media file, and then, so again, you have to be careful and look. It's all about the log data. So plays, I would never ever report to an advertiser plays from Spotify. I would not use their stats. Right. I would use your hosting provider stats.
But if Spotify is counting this 1 second of play, so you click play and then you stop within 1 second, Spotify is counting that as a download or a play. They're probably using the term.
Well, they don't use the word download.
Right, because they're supposedly a streaming platform, right?
Yeah. So it's,
streaming with podcasting, yeah.
People can do what they want to do and report how they want to report, but if it was me and I'm running an ad campaign, I'm going to report my IAB certified download numbers, because play is not a reportable. This is the dilemma that we're moving into right now. Again, is everyone wants to call it a play, right. And actually the article that he
issue, right?
Yeah, the article that he did talked about this exact issue we've been talking about for more than 10 years.
Right.
And how people want to call everything a stream. Well, it's a stream. Well, it's a streaming. It's a progressive download is the technical term.
Mm-hmm.
Play
and stream kind of ride together in people's perceptions.
Right.
And that's not what's going on here. And that's why I wanted to talk about this, is because this really cuts to the chase of the conflation of the issue, right, in people's perception of the metrics.
I forget, what is his name? Brian's the author of
Brian Burletta.
Yeah, Brian Burletta. So if you guys aren't subscribed to his newsletter, maybe you should be, especially if you want to. This last article, and I chuckled all the way through, because I'm like, Brian, you're just figuring this out. Come on, this is something that maybe he knew and maybe just brought to light, but we've known about this conundrum for a very, very, very long time. And matter of fact, it was part of some of the early IAB discussion points where there was outright, how should we say it, battles over terminology.
Well, I think the battles are still there, Todd.
Yeah.
I mean, we still haven't resolved this issue, because a lot of these listening platforms want things to be streamed.
Yeah.
But the technology doesn't enable that. But, as far as the listener concerned, they can't tell, right? So
in a DAI ad injected system, it still is a download.
Right.
It's still, media is being served progressively. It may progressively completely download it.
Right. And to most people, they don't really care.
They don't care. And to the audience, they want to hit play and listen. That's it. They don't care what we call it.
Right.
It's just in the reporting side and being able to try to, explain to.
Yes, of course you care about
Right.
these type of things, and if you're a listening platform,
Yeah,
of
you
course
don't care.
Todd, Podfest Expo, if you haven't heard, they were scheduled to have an event in Orlando in June. Has now been postponed. Date.
Do we know the underlying reason? I know what they said in their statement, but were they getting pressure from people, or did they just figure they couldn't do it correctly by June? Or
my guess, they weren't getting registrations. Is my guess.
Oh.
People weren't wanting to commit to traveling yet.
Yeah. Well, with them having done 2 virtual events, why would people travel to an event if they're doing them virtually? So this is going to be the challenge, I think, for all of these. I talked to another gal that's having an event in conjunction with NRB down in Texas. And that's later in the year, and it probably will go. And I'm excited for her event and what they're going to do. It's from the Spark team,
right.
The Christian conference that started in Texas. Then we've got Podcast Movement a little later in the year. We got NAB, and NAB. Now get this, Rob. NAB this year, the radio show, which usually is a completely separate event, is going to be held in conjunction with NAB. I didn't see if the dates lined up exactly. Matter of fact, we've got a request out to NAB and say, okay, what's this going to look like? Because we feel there's a lot of value in maybe being where the radio show piece is. If there's going to be a separate exhibit, we don't know how that's going to work. So I'm excited. I'm glad they're lining those 2 events because it reaches the audience that, well, us as a podcast host, we want to talk to the radio people, radio stations, etc.
Well, I did notice that the podcast pavilion at NAB is pretty small. Like four booths, I think.
So who is it? Us, Podbean, you, who else?
I think that's it. I don't even think Podbean's
So what we should do is we should collaborate and tell NAB to move those booths closer to wherever the radio show stuff is.
Well, actually, the podcast pavilion is in the radio area.
It's in the radio area, but is the radio show? Are they going to? How are they over? We're just going to have to find out from NAB how they're overlapping that.
Yep, that's true.
So getting down the weeds here. Sorry, everyone. Hey, Tom, welcome to. Oh, he was on.
Yeah.
Clubhouse. And he bounced out.
Hey, Paul, I wanted to ask you a question. Are you hearing about any podcasting events down in Australia that are coming back here soon, like this summer or anything like that? I don't know if you have heard anything or what's going on down in Australia with podcast events.
I haven't noticed any announcements recently, but there's certainly no reason here in New Zealand or Australia that those things couldn't be organised. I think there's still a level of sort of being on tenterhooks, knowing that small lockdowns and so on can happen. So I know some people are still a little bit cautious, but we've just had the America's Cup event here in New Zealand, which came to a pretty good conclusion for the Kiwis yesterday. We're huge gatherings of people celebrating that, and a lot of people getting out on the water. So we are starting to see more industry type events happen, but there's still that cautiousness, and some events are just staying online at this stage. I'm kind of interested to see how that plays out, but I haven't noticed any announcements. But doesn't mean that I'm across all of it. That's for sure.
I'm participating, Rob, in an event on April 5th. I think Pod Fiesta. It's going to be a online event down in Australia.
Oh, it's a virtual event.
Virtual event, yeah.
Yeah.
And they've just expanded it from 1 day to 2. Apparently, they've had a lot of, getting a lot of demand, so they increased the number of days. So I'm going to pre-record my stuff. It's because my time slot would have been like 11 p.m. Eastern or something like that on a Saturday. So,
yeah. Interesting. So there's a lot of talk that's been happening about the new Apple Podcasts app that's coming, right? With the change from subscribe to follow, but there's going to be other areas too. I guess there's commentary now that's come out saying that the available for free tag is not going to be included, which I'm not sure has been included for a while now.
Yeah, right? I don't think so.
Yeah, so that's, and then I think the upgrade 14.5, which is the upgrade that's going to have all these changes, I think the rumor is that it's going to come out here in the next week or so. I don't know if you've heard anything, Tom.
I haven't been tracking the release date per se.
I don't think that they publicly announced it yet. I think it's a rumor that's flying around right now that the 14.5 update to iOS is coming like toward the end of the month here.
Yeah, my last Mac update, the actual operating system update, was a little hokey. I was having it was either my internet here was weird or it was something that they changed in the networking piece of it, because I would type in a .com and it would just like kind of not even load for like 10 seconds. It was almost like there was a connection issue, and I took me a couple days here kind of monkeying around to kind of resolve it, but it even had me leery today doing the show. But, you know, all these operating systems are not without challenges at times. I see Intel, though, is running a huge advertising campaign against Mac. They've hired some spokespeople that used to advertise for Mac, and they're basically saying, hey, you know, with a Windows PC, you can have a tablet and a computer all in one. And the kind of the thing that they showed off was, you know, a guy holding a MacBook and then an iPod or an iPad and then a keyboard and then dongles.
And right there is the Surface computer with all of it in one, right?
Right. So, but I must say, though, I think you still have more technical challenges at times than Mac users do. But I'm running both here, so I can't say too much.
Two Surface tablets here that are running my whole computing experience. So, yeah.
My TriCaster was due. Actually, I hadn't been even really paying attention to it, and there was a bunch of upgrades available, and went to upgrade, and it says, hey, you can't upgrade because you need to update your video driver. And on the TriCaster, updating the video driver is like one of those scary as HELL moments, because the TriCaster is so funny, its configuration, and they didn't tell us what version of driver to upload. And so I pressed the update button, and the FGPAs got updated and it rebooted and came online. So I was like, but it's a little more complicated machine than just running a desktop.
Hey, Paul, are you on a Mac? So have you had any issues with your upgrades or your iPads or anything?
No, I run my iPad Pro. I think is running beta builds of iPad OS. My Mac, no problems on Mac. I tend to be across sort of both sides, doing a tech podcast and commentating on tech and, you know, TV and radio here in New Zealand. I have to kind of keep across both sides. And yeah, I haven't come across too many issues. I'm also running one of the Macs with the Apple Silicon, and have so far had a reasonably good experience with that, although it's not as my main MacBook Pro. So I've tended to gravitate back towards the MacBook Pro with an i9. But no, mostly seems to be been running well so far.
I've got one machine here running on the new Iron as well. This is a new Mac Mini, running the M1. I think it is, at least. But you know, I'm basically now on two Mac Minis that are within about a year of each other. The other one just got to the point where it was taking 10 minutes to boot, and that's what happens when you have a 7-year-old Mac Mini.
Yeah. I thought about getting a separate, you know, kind of computer that just runs my audio stuff. So I don't.
Oh, absolutely. That way you leave it all plugged in, you don't touch it, then you have a regular work machine. That's the only way to fly. And being that you're doing so many different things, Rob.
Yeah, I leave my Surface here all the time, so it's not like I used to when I was traveling a lot, when I was taking my Surface with me all the time. But
have Lori get you an iMac or a iMac or something like that.
No problem, Todd.
Just put that on the expense account.
Right. So anything else happened? I know we're down to the last 10 minutes or so of the show.
Yeah. So I'm doing an AMA today with Podcast Movement, and I'm going to do a little thing on growing your show organically. If you've listened to the show many times, you probably won't learn anything from that, but I do have a couple of drop the mic type of statements to make. But I just what I continue to see, at least in what's hitting my inbox, is a lot more podcasters now are thinking and trying to determine what they can do in a multitude of ways to grow their show. This is the number one thing podcasters are asking, and how to grow my show and things to do to grow my show. So
I hear a lot of questions about monetization. People wanting to make money from their shows without a lot of regard for growing your show first.
Right.
So,
I'm just trying to be brutally honest with podcasters, and everyone that listens to this show kind of knows where you have to be. But when someone is asking the question to monetize a show and they've got 250, somehow the metric has become how many downloads over 30 days for your show. That's the wrong metric. It's how many downloads per episode over 30 days. Right. How many downloads does that a single episode got? Because you can have 10 episodes, have a little bit of long tail, and have 5,000 downloads for the month, but spread across all those shows, and most media buyers don't buy into old inventory. So it's on new episodes.
Right.
So when I finally kind of stress that to people and say, that's how we're going to bill it. If you run 4 ads, you run the next 4 episodes, I'm going to take your total downloads of your 4 episodes over the 30-day period of the ad, or 45 days. I usually take a 45-day look at an episode, and I will add those up, and that's how you're going to get paid on the CPM rate. And when you start...
It makes sense, Todd, because those are the episodes that have the ad.
Right. And when you explain that to the podcaster...
Right.
And you say, okay, you've got 400 downloads per episode. You're going to do 4 episodes this month with the ad. That's 1,600 total downloads over 40. I use, again, 45 days for billing. And so, 1,600 divided by 1,000, that's 1.6 times whatever the CPM rate is, $25, $30, $40, $45. And then is it worth it for you to run an ad in your show for a month on 4 episodes, get $60? For some, the answer is yes.
Right.
And I don't mind writing a check for $60 because that's, that pays for their hosting and pays for maybe a little editing. So,
that's the situation with a lot of the platform. I mean, with the platforms that are offering programmatic, right? Like a Spreaker or something like that. I think a lot of shows could make $20 or $15 or $30, but they're probably not going to get paid right away because a lot of them have a $50 limit you have to hit before you get a check. So
or they have they don't get, that's another thing too. A lot of these media buyers are real fast to pay. You do your reporting and if you see a check in 60 days, you do backflips because, they got you the check in 60 days.
Right.
So when you tell a podcaster, they're going to have to, and remember, we don't bill to 15 days after the campaign ends. So if it's only a 30-day campaign, it's 15 days till we bill, and then 60 days. So looking at 75 days before they get a check, and they're pounding on my door. Where's my money? Where's my money? Where's my money? And I'm like, well, we got to get our money first. So
right. Yeah. Hey, we've got a new person up on stage. Dustin, thanks for jumping up on stage and joining us. Thanks. I guess you're from Alaska, I guess. I was looking at your profile. Yep. Yeah. Well,
that's right. That's where I'm from.
And welcome to the show.
I'm in Denver right now.
Oh, you are? Okay. So you're doing a podcast right now?
Yeah, I'm actually producing one called Selling the Mountains, which is like it's for realtors. It's kind of a B2B thing, and it focuses on like real estate mountain towns, and so that's actually been quite successful since launch in February.
Oh, terrific! Do you have a question or a comment or anything? Yep.
Well, yeah. I mean, I have tons of questions and comments for you guys, but I guess right now I'll just make I'm attempting to do something. I run a festival up in Alaska. People fly in from all around the world for 10 days, and we do backcountry skiing and snowboarding, right? It's kind of like Burning Man of snowboarding.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Well, given the pandemic, we can't do it this year. We're just going to miss it. So I'm like, all right, what can we do? Should we go virtual? Will that work? And so I'm actually about to launch it, but I'm taking a Clubhouse format to it, where basically through webinar software, I'll just have like daily rooms. And we can pull people up on stage and have them discuss things and have experts. So a little nervous. I don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but I'm hoping by referring to these webinar places as rooms and having talks and making interactive, this Clubhouse model might work. I don't know.
So would you actually do it on Clubhouse fully, or do it on Zoom and Clubhouse or something like that?
Yeah, it's basically it has to be monetized because we like plow out airstrip in the mountains and we put in internet. There are some base costs, plus I have government permits, so I don't really know how to like charge for that through Clubhouse. So I just got like an event management system and integrated it with webinar software, Big Marker.
Oh, okay.
And so it makes it super easy to check in for people, and they can go in with audio or audio and camera, and you can have 9 people on a stage at once.
Wow. Okay. That sounds interesting.
What's the, do you have a web address for the event for someone that might be interested?
I will later today. That's why, I was kind of listening to you guys a little bit, but I'm programming everything and finalizing and doing the official public announcement today. So I will to show you guys.
Awesome.
Well, let us know, and we'll mention it on the show. So.
Yeah, that's great. And then back to the monetization thing real quick. Okay, so we've got all these networks that are kind of saying, hey, you guys can come in, we'll do your ad sales, the dynamic insertion or host reads, and after 30 days, you'll get paid out based on impressions for listens, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually,
go ahead.
They shouldn't be using impressions for listens. That's really a bad term. Actually, it's not the term that's been agreed upon, but if that's the term they're using, so be it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, maybe they're just actually using listens, and I'm just kind of switching up myself. But, if you're a small show that's kind of rising, but you're only getting, say, on like monetizable episodes for the month, like 10, 20,000 downloads, plays, is that like a sustainable path for growth for like a mid-sized podcast or a small one?
If you're getting, well, depends again, not over how many downloads per episode, and if you're collectively getting 5,000 downloads per episode and you're doing 4 episodes a month, yes, that is, you're in territory now to start doing very well on advertising.
Yeah. The CPMs are like typically 15 to 25 for that?
Well, for host reds, 25 to 45 for host reds right now. For programmatic, it could be anywhere from $6 to $15 on programmatic. It all depends. Programmatic is ones that you don't host read that's automatically injected into your show, but you have to be on a platform that supports that. So, but a good host read CPM will get 25 plus right now.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And so how do you think that compares to like the membership kind of, subscription? Like I want to subscribe and support your podcast. If you're a growing podcast, which one should they choose?
I think you can do both. And I do it on my show. I have advertising. I have GoDaddy as a sponsor for my main show. And then I also have a contribution model. It's not on Patreon. They just send me a PayPal every month. But I do both. And we use the PayPal money to help pay the writers and some of the stuff for the production. Hey, I do have to apologize, Dustin. We have to quit early today because I've got another presentation up.
Yeah.
But thanks for your question.
Talking.
Yeah. Well, thanks for stepping up, Dustin, Paul. We appreciate you jumping up and getting involved in the conversation. Mark and Greg, I appreciate you being here. This show we do every Saturday and Wednesday. On Saturdays, we do it at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, and on Wednesday, we do it at noon Pacific and 3 o'clock Eastern. So you can come back and we do it live on Clubhouse as well as live on Facebook and YouTube, and it's actually on the video side, so you can see us on all those platforms too.
And again, the only reason we're quitting early today is because of my conflict of schedule. We normally do 90 minutes, but go over to newmediashow.com. Please get subscribed to the show. All of you have been watching live. Thanks for your participation today and making comment. And of course, I'm Todd at blueberry.com. At Geek News is my Twitter account. Rob?
Yeah, I can be found on Twitter too, at Rob Greenlee, and you can send an email to me if you want, robg@libsyn.com, and that's libsyn.com. So thank you so much for checking us out this week, and come back and check out our Saturday episode.
Absolutely, and thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you next time on the New Media Show. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, guys. That was great.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
I quite like the shorter format. Sorry, I think I missed one of your questions because the time of day it's running around the house getting organised.
Okay. That's okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Well, thanks, Paul. Appreciate it, and I'm sure I'll see you around Clubhouse.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Take care.
All right.
See you guys. See you, Todd.
See you later.